Prince Philip, the husband of the Queen Elizabeth, has died at the age of 99.
Yeah, you may have known that he had been hospitalized for a time, and family had been visiting with him. He had been then taken back to Buckingham Palace just a few weeks ago, and no one has really seen him since he had returned a few weeks ago.
Yeah, His Royal Highness, according to the royal family, passed away peacefully this morning at Windsor Castle. He was 99.
And yes, of course, in those early years when they got married and also when Princess Elizabeth became Queen, it was a much more deferential age. Of course, that changed a great deal as the decades went on. And Prince Philip, I think, was really integral in this sense of we need to get out there and we need to meet people. And people have often talked about how the Queen, yes, of course, she's wonderful when it comes to meeting people and has that very distinct form of diplomacy, the quiet diplomacy that people talk about. But also there is a shyness about the Queen. And people would often talk about how the Duke of Edinburgh would really help to bring out her character, or at least help to ease sometimes quite tense situations and help to lift the spirits of people who were there. If you think it was the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh who actually invented the royal walkabout that we talk about so often now, that it's become part of what's expected of members of the royal family. But it was back in the 1970s, as they were touring Australia and New Zealand, that Prince Philip and the Queen decided, yeah, we're going to get out of the car and we're going to go and meet people. And it was really that natural connection that he had with people that was so important. Before the Queen's 90th birthday, I actually talked to Prince Edward and the Countess of Wessex about the fact that they were this very strong partnership. And the Countess of Wessex talked about how whenever Prince Philip saw a little child in the crowds, maybe with flowers for the Queen, sometimes he would lift that child up and take them towards the Queen so that they were able to have their moment with the monarch. And yeah, I think throughout those years, they were such an important, enduring team. And of course, the Queen, with that top job as sovereign over the years, very difficult to share every experience with people. There, of course, is always that sense of deference around Her Majesty. But I think with Prince Philip, of course, he was there constantly as a sounding board and somebody that she could share all of those experiences with. Those moments when maybe things didn't quite go right on royal engagements, which we know the royal family enjoy so much. They were there to share those moments together. And he was a constant support when it came to her writing speeches. People have talked about how the Christmas broadcast was often one that the Queen really poured over and took her time over, and Prince Philip was always there to help discuss that with her.
We are now looking at the Union flag flying at half-mast there over Buckingham Palace. We can bring in Alistair Bruce, our royal expert, to speak to us now, hearing from Rhiannon there about the role that Prince Philip played as support to Her Majesty the Queen. Alistair, the former private secretary to the Queen, Lord Charteris, said he is the only man in the world who treats the Queen as a human being.
Well, it's a very lonely place to be Queen, and as has often been said, anybody who comes close to her gains something for themselves. And what I think marvellous is that you have in Prince Philip somebody who consistently and always gives the Queen honesty and advice, teased her, and used to make sure that if anyone was being wrong or treating her wrongly, he would just get involved and sort it out, and was pretty blunt. And he had the capacity through his own military training to be quite a redoubtable person, and he could give a pretty good ticking off to protect the Queen. And it's been a difficult age that the Queen has reigned through, a time of scientific development, a time of enormous advance in so many areas of social life and much else. And Prince Philip's guidance has always been to make sure that in everything, the monarchy gradually reinvented itself to suit the changing times. And I think that particularly towards the end,
here in the United Kingdom, across the Commonwealth and around the world. He was the longest-serving consort in history, one of the last surviving people in this country to have served in the Second World War, at Cape Matapan, where he was mentioned in dispatches for bravery, and in the invasion of Sicily, where he saved his ship by his quick thinking. And from that conflict, He took an ethic of service that he applied throughout the unprecedented changes of the post-war era. Like the expert carriage driver that he was, he helped to steer the royal family and the monarchy so that it remains an institution indisputably vital to the balance and happiness of our national life. He was an environmentalist and a champion of the natural world long before it was fashionable. With his Duke of Edinburgh award scheme, he shaped and inspired the lives of countless young people, and at literally tens of thousands of events, he fostered their hopes and encouraged their ambitions. We remember the Duke for all of this, and above all, for his steadfast support for Her Majesty the Queen. Not just as her consort, by her side every day of her reign, but as her husband, her strength and stay of more than 70 years. And it is to Her Majesty and her family that our nation's thoughts must turn today, because they have lost not just a much-loved and highly respected public figure, but a devoted husband and a proud and loving father, grandfather, and in recent years, great-grandfather. Speaking on their golden wedding anniversary, Her Majesty said that our country owed her husband a greater debt than he would ever claim or we shall ever know. And I'm sure that estimate is correct. So we mourn today with Her Majesty the Queen. We offer our condolences to her and to all her family. And we give thanks as a nation and a kingdom for the extraordinary life and work of Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh.
Prime Minister there issuing his statement in response to the news from Buckingham Palace that Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, has died at the age of 99. He spoke of a man who had earned the affection of generations and who had helped to steer the royal family and the monarchy in difficult times as a devoted husband and proud and loving father, grandfather and great-grandfather. That statement from Buckingham Palace. It is with deep sorrow that Her Majesty the Queen announces the death of her beloved husband, His Royal Highness the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. His Royal Highness passed away peacefully this morning at Windsor Castle. Further announcements will be made in due course. The royal family join with people around the world in mourning his loss.
We are interrupting our normal programmes to bring you an important announcement. You're watching BBC News from London. A short while ago, Buckingham Palace announced the death of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. In a statement, the Palace said, "It is with deep sorrow that Her Majesty the Queen announces the death of her beloved husband, His Royal Highness the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. His Royal Highness passed away peacefully this morning at Windsor Castle. Further announcements will be made in due course. The royal family join with people around the world in mourning his loss." BBC Television is broadcasting this special programme reporting the death of the Duke of Edinburgh.